When you think of civil rights, who do you think of? Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela? Another founding father of civil rights who is less well known is Fred Korematsu. An innocent man, when betrayed by his country, stood up for 120,000 other Japanese Americans who had their civil rights violated. During the 1940s, Fred Korematsu took a stand against the Japanese internment and tried to protect Japanese American citizens who had their rights disregarded by the government's actions. Fred Korematsu helped pave the path of civil rights in America and highlighted the importance of the United States Constitution. Throughout the 1900s, many Japanese people pursued the American dream by immigrating to the United States. However, they were not always treated as equals. In the minds of some, Japanese immigrants posed a threat to American jobs and communities. In the late 1930s, Japan's dominance grew as World War II was taking hold. America's entry into World War II began with Japan's bombing of Pearl Harbor. The United States president at the time of the bombing was Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us.
Japan's surprise attack led to the signing of the Declaration of War against the Axis powers on December 8, 1941, and the signing of Executive Order 9066. Executive Order 9066 allowed the Secretary of War and military commanders to exclude, intern, and evacuate over 120,000 Japanese Americans from their homes on the West Coast. All Japanese Americans living on the west coast of the United States were forced to sell their belongings in a matter of days and be taken to internment camps. Former internee Mae Murakami recalls the poor conditions of the camps.
Because that's what I always remember. It was the middle of nowhere with nothing.
They were placed in inhumane living conditions, no heat, no air conditioning, and sanitation was sparse.
So they had the watchtower right there outside of our window. And at night they could, shine that light right through.
The internees did not feel like they were being protected by their country. Rather, their country was being protected from them.
The first thing I noticed was there were 4 sentries in the camp. And the 4 sentries had their guns facing in towards the camp. When I saw the infantries facing their guns inward instead of outwards to protect us, this is when I kept my mouth shut, but I was a little concerned.
In 1919, Fred Korematsu was born in the San Francisco Bay Area. He embraced being an American, and even changed his Japanese first name to Fred. Korematsu believed that as an American, he was granted all the rights and protections guaranteed to him by the Constitution. He felt a strong patriotic duty to serve his country. However, he was rejected from the Army for poor health and was fired from his welding job because of his race. Fred once said, "I wanted to be in defense work. I am an American. I have nothing to do with Japan, and so this is sort of an insult to me." To avoid internment, he moved cities, got plastic surgery, and even claimed he was Hispanic. Eventually, Fred was arrested and joined his family in the internment camps.
I didn't feel that I did anything wrong. And if anybody did wrong, it was the law.
After being interned, Fred Korematsu filed a suit to challenge the constitutionality of the Japanese internment. Korematsu's case rose through the appellate courts and eventually was heard by the United States Supreme Court. Korematsu believed the internment's restrictions violated the internees' constitutional rights and that the executive order deprived people of their liberty. Justice Hugo Black, a main supporter of the internment, claimed Korematsu was excluded because we were at war with the Japanese Empire, because the properly constituted military authorities feared an invasion of the West Coast, and military urgency required that citizens of Japanese ancestry be segregated from the West Coast temporarily. However, Justice Roberts in dissent stated, the indisputable facts exhibit a clear violation of constitutional rights. Fred Korematsu lost the Supreme Court case. It was another 40 years until Korematsu's criminal conviction for defying incarceration was overturned. Since Korematsu lost his original Supreme Court case, everything declared by Executive Order 9066 and the restrictions put in place by the Secretary of War were viewed as constitutional. Because of this, the underlying racism and prejudice that came with rounding up an entire ethnic group of people was lawful. 40 years later, Korematsu's individual conviction was overturned in a coram nobis case in the federal district courts. Coram nobis occurs when there's enough error in the original ruling to warrant a new examination. While Korematsu's individual conviction for evading internment was overturned, the right for the government to intern an entire ethnic group of people is still viable today.
One thing Judge Patel said was, the Korematsu case remains on our law books, but it is a reminder to all of us of what can happen during wartime, that no group should be treated this way.
Korematsu influenced the civil rights movement and taught the public about voicing their opinions.
My uncles believed you should stand up for your rights, and as an American citizen, that you have the right to be able to speak up for things that you think are important.
Korematsu's case is also studied today in law school because of the error in the original ruling.
When I read Korematsu was the first time that I really realized that not only had this happened to the Japanese American community, but that the highest court in the country had said that it was okay. It represented a really black part of American legal history.
Fred Korematsu took a stand because he challenged widely accepted views prevalent during World War II. We must all continue to remember the importance of logical thinking and rational interpretation of the Constitution, a struggle that continues today regarding terrorism, war, and immigration.
Can you imagine 120,000 that peacefully left their home? If something like that happened today, there would be riots.
Dozens of passengers were detained.
Unfortunate reality of the war on terror, it keeps getting uglier and uglier.
Korematsu helped pave the path of civil rights in America, a fact validated by the presentation of the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Bill Clinton in 1998.
In the long history of our country's constant search for justice, some names of ordinary citizens stand for millions of souls. Plessy, Brown, Parks. To that distinguished list, today we add the name of Fred Korematsu.
Our Constitution is a remarkable, beautiful gift. But it's really just a piece of parchment. It has no power on its own. We, the people, give it power. We, the people, give it meaning with our participation and with the choices that we make.
Myself